video.
You've captured nothing?
We captured no sound until now.
All right,
Sorry.
that's okay. We'll start the annual meeting and I'll skip the secondary pledge of allegiance. All right, yeah, I'll give you the official gavel and everything. All right, for those of you watching at home, apparently you did not get any sound the first go round, so we're starting the meeting over, but the agenda will be the same. All right, it's Tuesday, April 16th, a little bit after 6, and we welcome you to the annual meeting of the town of Sevastopol. First thing we'd like to do is introduce the town officers and then have you introduce yourself so we know who's all here. And why don't we start with, what's your name?
My name is Amy Fluck. I am clerk treasurer for the town of Sevastopol, and I live at 4818 County Road P.
There we go.
Mark Hain, Town Supervisor, 4675 Matthew Road.
Jeannie Vogel, Town Supervisor, 4693 Windermere Drive.
Dan Wolfle, Town Chair, Bark Road.
Linda Waite, Town Supervisor and fairly new resident at Cherry Hills Condominium, 4466 Fairway Lane.
There we go.
Trent Olson, Town Supervisor, 5856 Timber Ridge Road.
Okay, let's start. One of our presenters this evening. Just have you introduce yourself.
Just
Elizabeth McMaster, I'm with CLA consultant for the town.
Dick Weidman, Country View Road.
There you go.
Dale Vogel, I'm a county supervisor on the Bayside, and Windermere Road.
Arlene Wolfle, Bark Road.
Michael Zimmerman, State Highway 57, just down here.
Cool.
Keelan Montevideo was surveyed by her.
Henry Parsons, Very Shore Drive.
Chuck DeVerde, and then on Route 57.
Hugh Zuttle, I'm the District 14 County Supervisor on the quiet side of Sevastopol,
There you go.
Glidden Drive.
Jackie Exlin, White Chicks Bay Road.
George Zachariason, Walk Court Trail. Bill Schuster, Glidden Drive.
There we go.
Jean Elsie, Glidden Drive.
Can't even see you, Gene. You're back there somewhere. Oh, okay. And our two videographers are?
Derek and East Country View Road.
Larry Chapman, Glidden.
All right. Well, thank you and welcome all. The first order of business would be for us to give the oath of office to our newest board member, Trent Olson, and I will leave that up to the,
And we can have Jeannie stand up as well.
I also.
oh, that's right, my
Be sworn in.
apologies.
Yep,
That's right, you did win.
I did win.
All right.
So if you could stand up and raise your right hand. I, and then state your name,
I, Trent
Jeannie
Olson,
Vogel,
having been elected to town board supervisor,
having
having
been elected to Town Board Supervisor,
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the state of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully and impartially
and will faithfully and impartially
discharge duties of said office
discharge duties of said office
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Oh, congratulations. We always appreciate people who want to step up. All right. All right, at an annual town meeting, it's also possible for electors from the floor to make a motion. For example, we're going to review, not really review, but we have the annual meeting minutes from Tuesday, April 18th, 2023. You will find if you've perused them that we're going to talk about some of the same things a year later, hopefully with a little bit better update. But we would need a motion to approve the annual meeting minutes from April 18th. You can make it from the floor, and if not, someone on the board will.
I'll make that motion, Chair.
All right, we have a motion from Laddie and a second from Dale. Anyone have any questions relative to the annual minutes? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Jeannie? No, she's back there somewhere. It's okay. All right, thank you. All right, we're going to have a number of special reports tonight. We're going to start off with a presentation and review of our 2023 audited financial results. Elizabeth introduced herself earlier, and she will take us through that. And by the way, this evening, if someone would like to speak, we're going to ask you to step up and use the podium so that we can hear what's being said, and it also can come across on the video. So, all right, Elizabeth, thank you. Please go.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for having me here tonight at the meeting. The good news is that there's really not too much that has changed since previous year. The whole goal of our audit is to provide an opinion on the financial statements. That is the report that is on page 1 of those financial statements. And I'm here to say that we provided an unmodified opinion, which means that the financial statements are materially correct. It doesn't mean that we're going to find, every error that could potentially be in here. There's gonna be things that are $20, $100, $500, $1,000, but we use a risk-based approach throughout our audit. There's formulas that we use to aid us to determine what those calculations should be. And so I'm standing here today saying that, the financial statements are materially correct. If there had been any changes in accounting principles or any changes in the accounting policies for the town, those would have been listed in the opinion as well to call the attention to those. It was a pretty quiet year. There was a standard that could have been applicable. It was called GASB 96. You may have heard grumblings about it. It's not the funnest standard to work through. It did not end up being applicable to the town. But just briefly what that is in case it does impact you in future years. If you enter into a software agreement where you have the right to use that software over a period of 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, there is it's now required to be recorded in your financial statements, whereas in the past that was never a requirement. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. That's something that we'll always look for the audit. It's something that has impacted some places, but as I said, it did not impact the town this year. So pretty routine year. Skipping ahead to page 6, when the financial statements are issued, there are essentially 2 sets of financial statements in here. This is just how the standards are written in relation to governments. So page 6 is known as the government-wide statements. This is where you're going to see all long-term items in here. So the town's participation in the Wisconsin retirement system, that's something the state of Wisconsin is unique, I would say, in the fact that it's a fully funded plan. Depending on how investment returns do, it's sometimes a slightly overfunded plan, sometimes a slightly underfunded plan. That's nothing of the town's doing. It's all administered at the state level. But if you're looking at page 6, and if you're just kind of comparing last year to this year, you'll see up at the top of the page, in the assets section, there's a line called the net pension asset. In 2022, there was a balance of $27,000, and this year it's 0. Well, that's because of the way the market fell this year. It was an asset last year. It went to a slight liability this year. This does not mean that the town is on the hook for this money. If the plan were to completely crumble and they had to pay out this benefit now, that's the amount of money down in the liabilities section, the net pension liability, that just shy of 18 grand there. But that's just something that's a requirement based on the accounting standards to be recorded. That's not necessarily, a liability to the town that you owe tomorrow or anything like that. This schedule also shows your long-term obligations. So the state trust fund loan that the town took out a few years ago, that's being paid down every year. So this statement will show those long-term items. This is a service that we do for the town to convert your financial statements into this manner, but I'll be very honest, they are not used for too much in the grand scheme of things. So just know that they exist, but really the decisions don't really get made from this schedule. What I'll say is the more important version of statements start on page 8. These are known as the fund financials. So one thing that I'll point out on page 8, you can see down in the liabilities section, there is the line for what's called the unearned revenues, ARPA. That's that American Rescue Plan Act money. It's a little bit unique in the fact that you don't actually recognize the revenue until you incur the expenditures. That there's that matching component there. So those ARPA revenues, as the town is determining what they're going to spend them on, they sit in that a balance sheet account as an unearned revenue. When the town does finally make their decision, they'll move off the balance sheet and into a revenue offset against the expenses, and the net impact on your income statement is essentially zero. So I know that that's been, you know, a hot topic amongst many municipalities, and just know that that's where those sit. We monitor those as the town is working through those decisions, and we'll make sure that you're matching up those revenues and expenses in the year that you determine, you know, what they're gonna be spent on.
And we moved that at the meeting last night to road construction, so that would be a
Perfect.
substantial change.
Yes, perfect,
Okay.
yep. So that'll get recognized on your income statement in 2024 against those road expenditures. We'll take a look at that during next year's audit as well, so perfect. Okay, down in the bottom section of this, I'll touch on this more later, but I just wanna make sure I point this out. These are the ending fund balance categories. It's a little bit unique to governments that, you know, there's the rainy day funds, there's assigned funds, committed funds. These all have different purposes, and I'll go into those in a little bit. But just wanted to point out, and we'll come back to those. Page 10 is the overall income statement for the town. So overall, there's more details in the back, so I won't spend a lot of time on this. But the town did end up having, you know, a little bit more in expenditures than what they took in revenues. I think that the town has really worked to watch what their future plans are. So as I'll talk on that topic a little bit more later, no concerns there, but they did end up using a little bit of the reserves from previous years. Page 12, this is the start of, you know, what gives you a little bit of information as to what happened compared to the budget for the town over the year. You can see up in the top section, the revenues were about 190 grand higher than what they budgeted. You always want to budget conservatively, right? And you're able to add a lot more in revenues than what you're anticipating. So that's a positive sign to the town. In the expenditures section, the town only went over the expenditures compared to what they budgeted by about $54,000. So that was a great way to control those costs. We see, and I know that we've talked in many years, snow plowing is a quick one that, you know, you get a really bad storm, the overtime from that, depending on how those fall, it can significantly impact those expenditures. So the town did a really good job in keeping those under control, and then also the revenues obviously very much surpass what the excess expenditures were. All right. I won't get into too many details in the notes. If you read through it, it kind of goes over all of the accounting policies in place for the town, the application of them throughout. Skipping ahead to page 26. This is the capital asset footnote. This links to the government-wide schedule, that first set of financial statements. You can see that usually the town is doing some types of road projects, making improvements to the road. There's usually a few $100,000 worth of an investment put into those roads. So that schedule on page 26 is showing what that investment was in the town roads through the year. And there's other things that I know typically the town has some capital items that, you know, they just might not rise to levels that they end up on the schedule, or based on their nature, they might not end up in here. So it's not a perfect science necessarily. If an individual asset item is under the threshold, it wouldn't get recorded. So infrastructure is the big one that does end up being recorded year to year. Page 27 shows the long-term debt obligations. Again, that would link to the government-wide schedule. Town continues to pay down the debt state trust fund loan from a few years ago. No issued debt obligations in this next year, or for 2023, I should say. On page 2028, this is always a footnote that is of interest because obviously the state of Wisconsin limits the amount of debt that a municipality can take out. The town of Sevastopol is in a unique position that you guys have a ton of room in your debt limit. So technically, if the town wanted to, you could take out, you know, $57.5 million worth of debt for a large project that you have going on.
And the lynching would begin like right after.
Yes, the the phone calls, you might just want to cut your phone line if that were to happen. I don't recommend that, but obviously that's a good key to keep in your back pocket if there's ever that point that, you know, that large project comes upon you, that development, you never know what's going to happen, and we have seen municipalities work through those items. We do see municipalities that are on the opposite end, where they are reaching that capacity and they don't know what to do. So, I mean, you guys are the spectrum. It's not too often that you have that much wiggle room. I think this is the only board meeting that I joke about how much debt limit you have. So, okay, so skipping ahead to page 35, I mentioned those fund balance, those rainy day funds, your assignments, commitments, non-spendable. Those are in more detail on this schedule right here. So the restricted fund balance, that's pretty straightforward. It's restricted by, you know, outside donor contributions. It's restricted by outside individuals to be used for that purpose. The committed fund balance, what that means is that it's done by town board action. So when the town is taking an active role in planning for those future costs, you have the ability to set aside some of the revenues that you're taking in year over year in order to pay for future costs. Those sit into that committed fund balance range. As part of the audit, we take a look at what was your beginning balance, what did you put in there in your current year for revenues, what did you spend, making sure that you're spending things that you should be, right? And then what's that ending balance, and that's what gets reported into this schedule. I know that, just for an example, I think the town had about 120 grand for the revaluation, and that occurred, I want to say it was about 75 grand that was spent on that. So you can see that revaluation account went down to that current value this year. That is a perfect example of how that committed fund balance is used year to year, and you know, the town's active monitoring is a positive sign as to being able to manage those costs in future years when sometimes those unexpected costs happen. The beautiful thing about committed fund balance is that you can put things in, you can take things out of it as well. So if a project popped up that you're like, whoa, we really got to look at this, maybe, you know, broadband was an item in there, maybe that drops off and that gets used for something else. So that can all be done through town board action, and we monitor that through the audit. On the top of page 36, assigned fund balance, what this category is that if the town knows that, so we audited 2023, town was obviously working on preparing their 2024 budget. They plan to use some of those funds that are carrying over from 2023 in 2024. We assign, or we don't, but the town ends up assigning that fund balance that will be used in the 2024, so that when you're looking at your picture of what 2023 happened, you can get an adequate view of what's left over, right? And that's what's in that disclosure right below the assigned of the minimum general fund balance policy. So the reserves in the unassigned were just shy of 30 grand. Normally, we recommend, or the town has the policy of about 15%. So the town was a little bit shy of where they should be, but I think they have a very healthy fund balance in the committed fund balance, which again, that can be, you know, undone by town action if needed. And then also within the assigned fund balance, part of that is the use of ARPA funds. And so right now that assigned is kind of showing like it's being pulled out of your reserves, but really it's the use of those ARPA funds, and it drew your unassigned fund balance lower. So what does that all mean? That's a lot of accounting talk, right? The town, although they dipped low this year, if I were to do that calculation as it stands today, it would be completely different. And I feel like the ARPA funds being recognized in there is just gonna boost your unassigned fund balance because you were really setting aside funds that you had already. So, if that makes sense, or any questions on that? No? All right, skipping ahead to page 41. I'll just highlight a couple of this is the much more detailed version of the income statement, so this will also match the front, but this is really what you know, people can relate to and you're seeing day to day. You can see up in the taxes section at the top of page 41, the room taxes continued to be much higher than what was budgeted. I think that's been a yearly trend, and hopefully it'll continue to grow that way, right? Down in the middle of the page, building licenses and permits, those continue to be higher than budgeted for revenues. And down in the miscellaneous category, interest on investments, it was, I mean, we're seeing it across the state of Wisconsin. There's places that are just earning interest hand over foot right now. So that's positive, little boost to the town. And keep that up. I know that you guys are invested in LGIP. That continues to be a really, really strong one. So positive news for the town. On page 42, I mentioned earlier that reval occurred during 2023. You can see in the general government category, there's the assessor line, and that's where that money was spent to that had been set aside in previous years. Down in public works, snow removal went a little over budget, but as we said before, that's one of those items that can quickly go over depending on when the snow flies. All right. Skipping ahead to page 47, one of the indicators of how well an audit went is when you get to the findings for the year. One thing that I always encourage boards and communities to do is to compare what were last year's findings and what were this year's findings, because those changes indicate, are things getting better or are they getting worse? So there were actually 3 findings last year when there are only 2 this year, so that's a great indication for this town. The first one is segregation of duties for the clerk treasurer position. You guys are never gonna get away from that unless you hire somebody. It's just not worth it. We take a hard look at those types of items. If we were to come across any fraudulent activity or anything that we felt was, you know, essentially very risky, we would bring it to your attention and recommend some type of changes. So you know, Amy does an excellent job. She's very transparent in everything that she's giving to us for the audit. She asks us questions as needed. So, you know, doing a great job, and that finding is just something that you won't be able to get rid of, so. Page 48, preparation of the annual financial report. It's because we prepare it on behalf of the town. The amount of training and work that it takes, knowing all the disclosures and what can change, it's just not worth it from a cost-benefit analysis. So, and then the third finding that was in last year's and is no longer in this year's was a material adjustments to the financial statements. So I believe, if my memory serves me right, it had to do with when the ARPA is recognized. It's a little bit of a unique situation, like I explained earlier. So because we assisted with that, it ended up in a material change to the financial statements. This year we didn't have any changes. You know, we tweaked little things here or there, but really the financial statements were in a pretty good, or the accounts were in a good spot when we started the audit. So I always like to say, what does that mean? When, you know, you're given financial information at a board level, that means that usually you're getting pretty accurate information throughout the year in which to, you know, make decisions. We might be tweaking some things at the end of the year, making sure that something's, you know, recognized correctly, but that's really a good indicator of how many adjustments are happening, because otherwise you guys could be making decisions on incorrect data at that point. So that's a really good point that I want to make, is that finding is removed between last year and this year. So, all right, and then you guys do have the management letter, and if you would like to read through that, by all means, I won't go into anything because there's really nothing new. Normally, if there was anything major, I would go into that, but there's nothing. So I'll kind of skip over that for this year. So, are there any questions that I can answer?
Anyone in the meeting tonight that has a question on anything that's on there? Dick, you must have.
I was overwhelmed.
Oh, that is excellent news, Elizabeth, on all counts. All right, any from board?
The only question I have is, what exactly are we doing that we are so far ahead on that 53 million that we can borrow? Like, what specific things? I mean, it's awesome, but
It's a calculation based on our assessed
Equalized.
equalized value.
Yeah.
And so you can
I
borrow
get
up to
that part,
that.
but like, what are we doing specifically?
We're not really doing anything. The delta between what we spend and that ratio is what gives us the amount. So we could borrow, I would love to borrow 57 million. But it's really not anything that we're doing.
Yeah.
I think that's,
And with the equalized
going up.
Changing,
Going up.
next year,
It'll be-
We might be able to borrow 60 million
100 million.
or more, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that, there's places, it depends on what's going on in a municipality that really drives that, because, some places will bond for $5 million in order to gain that development that's coming up. So if you've got that, you're gonna have to bond for it, because there's not too many places that have the cash funds in order to pay for those items. So it's all dependent on what's happening. I think the town is also, I know that, like, when this building was built, you guys had a debt issuance. I think that was paid off at one of the or right around the time. So, monitoring where your cash is at, what you've got coming up in terms of projects. Are you gonna have the cash on hand? Do you have to think about going out for a bond issuance? Those are all the questions that, if you're keeping up on those types of items, it allows you to, not take out debt if you don't have to, not incur the interest that you don't have to. And I think that the town has been very mindful of that in the last years, with always hoping for growth, right? Yeah.
More tax dollars, Dick. Oh, sorry. Any other things? No. All right, I guess we're completed. Thank you very much for making the trip
Thanks,
tonight.
Elizabeth.
Yes,
appreciate
no
it.
problem. And thank
Nice
you
job.
all. Yes, thank you.
Thank you for going through that with us last week as well. I appreciate that. All right. Reverting back to our agenda, the next item on our agenda this evening is Kaylin Montevideo, who's going to do the annual fire report. As you well know, the Sturgeon Bay Fire Department provides our fire coverage, and we will give her the opportunity to share all of those things, especially that painted truck.
Maybe we should have changed the picture on there, I think.
There you go.
No, I'm joking. Good evening. So, Kaylin Montevideo, I'll say later in the report, Chief Tim Dittman has retired. Effectively, April 5th was his retirement date, but hasn't been with the department since February. Took some leave up until his retirement. So I was appointed as the interim fire chief while the Police and Fire Commission is deciding what the process is going to be for filling that position. So I prepared the annual fire report for you, as I have done in the past. Yes, we have a new truck on the front page. We took delivery of that truck, I believe, in October, sometime this fall, October, November, maybe November. It is a brush truck. It allows us to do some technical rescue as well. The nice thing about it is, if you can see on the front bumper of this truck, you see some kind of little pockets that we're able to slide our bipod system into it. So one of our big concerns for rescue is in the town of Sevastopol, Cave Point. We do multiple rescues at Cave Point. We're hoping that this truck will allow us to get up over that edge with a high point that's secured and not having to tie off to trees that maybe aren't a secure source for anchor point. So, in fact, our guys were out there this morning doing some training. Our other two shifts will be out there in the next couple weeks. So, if anybody gets a call that there's a bunch of people maybe going down the cliffs, it's our guys. So, I'll just run through the annual report. Not a lot of different how we set up our annual report. Might look a little different than other years, but if you have any questions, please let me know. We always add our mission statement and our statement of values, because we feel very strongly about that. We have not moved in the city. Our two stations on the east side and west side have remained the same. No updates to that. Our personnel, last year in April, May-ish, we did add a part-time admin assistant. So she works 20 hours a week just to help with general office duties. Our full-time staff has not changed. We still have our part-time fire inspector. We lost a few part-time staff last year. We ended the 2023 3 part-time firefighters short. We are still 3 part-time firefighters short. So anybody knows anybody, please send them my way. Our apparatus, with the addition of brush 716, that's the one that you see on the front cover of the report. Brush 717 snuck its way into this report. That was an oversight on my thing. It looks like it was put in there twice. We did get a new brush truck, 717 as well. That was not put into service till 2024. So we have 2 brush trucks that are virtually identical, with the exception of brush 717 is a crew cab, so a 4-man cab versus the 2-man cab that you see on the front page. The other, I'm not quite sure if last year we had the Coast Guard boom trailer. We found a deficiency in pretty much the county with some containment boom that really nobody had it in the county. So the Coast Guard said, well, we have it. We aren't gonna use it, and you guys can have it. And we'll keep it up to date. We'll give you all of the stuff for it. So we do house that Coast Guard boom trailer with, I think there's 800 feet of containment boom in there. So the next page, which you're probably interested in, is our incidents for 2023. We ran a total of 1,817 incidents last year. For the town of Sevastopol, we ran 87. Of those 87, 75 were, we categorize them as fire calls, but that would be any fire or service call. So alarms, car accidents, service calls get categorized under a fire call. And we also ran 12 EMR or EMS calls to assist the paramedics. So that happens when they have, possibly a lift assist that they just need an extra hand for. They have EMRs that, Sevastopol has their own EMRs that don't respond because there's nobody available and they just need an extra hand. Sturgeon Bay Fire assists with that. So on page 7, you'll see our incident types. So by jurisdiction, so you can look the 87 calls in the town of Sevastopol. The type is a little small, so I'm sorry about that. Let's see, we did, like I said, 87 calls in the town of Sevastopol, and you can see what those types of calls were. So kind of a whole gamut of calls. There's not one thing that is like, oh, that's what we need to work on for prevention. Probably our vehicle accidents and our alarms, false alarm calls, fire detector, or your smoke detectors going off, CO calls, something like that. On the next 2 pages is our, so page 8 and 9 is our 5 and 10 year incident comparison. So we always try to say, okay, what is our trend of our fire calls? Are we trending up in fire calls? Are we trending up in EMS calls? We know in the city and the town of Sturgeon Bay, we're trending up in EMS calls. We're just getting a lot more EMS calls. Town of Sevastopol, because we're not your EMR provider, we don't see those trending up. So on the top of page 8 and the top of page 9 are probably the 2 graphs that you're gonna be most interested in. So we see a trend overall in our response for incidents. On the top of page 9, with the exception of 2022, which I can't explain, we had quite a dip in incident response, but as of 2023, we're sneaking back up there to our average or our normal. So I don't know why 2022 was a good year for incidents for the town of Sevastopol, but like I said, last year we were creeping back up. And then we always try to forecast, okay, where are we gonna be in the next 5-6 years? And that's what you'll see on page 10 is our forecast of incidents. So, by 2028, we're expecting, over 2,300 calls. And we have kind of seen that trend that our call volume is going up. And then page 11, we're just talking a bit about our agency overview. So the things that we do as a fire department. We always say we're firefighters, but that's probably the least amount of things that we do in our job. It seems like when somebody doesn't know who to call, they call the fire department because we typically can solve the problem that they're having. Technical rescues, water rescues, we know we're a huge recreational community, so water rescues, drone operations, a lot of specialty things that are being added to our fire service that many of us did not start with our career. And then page 12 and 13 is just some more station activities, listing our equipment maintenance, some of the administrative things that go on, fire prevention. And then on the right-hand side of page 12 is our inspection breakdown. So in the town of Sevastopol, we conducted 136 regular inspections, so that's part of our 2% dues that you guys report back to the state, and then 15 re-inspections for a total of almost 115 hours. Our training hours are outlined on page 13, so just kind of an overview of some of the specialized training that we do with our staff. And we added some fun pictures this year too, because who doesn't like to look at some fun pictures, right? And then on the back page is our public education, fire safety report. Go into the schools, so we're at Sevastopol School doing fire prevention programs for all the elementary kids up to 5th grade, and then just some other community-based public education that we do.
What is the photo on the bottom of 13? Was this a burial? I mean, it's,
So the photo on the bottom, page 13, is actually one of our specialized rescue trainings for trench rescue. So we run in May, so coming up in a couple weeks, we run a 3-day technical rescue training with some instructors out of the Valley, one instructor from Appleton, one from Oshkosh, and we do a 3-day technical rescue refresher. One day we do trench rescue, one day we do confined space, and the next we do typically high angle rope rescue. So this picture was taken out at our training site, so out by the dog park in Sturgeon Bay. We have see those Connex boxes that are all stacked up. That's our fire department training site. Allows us to do live fire burns. DPW comes out and digs a trench for us, something different every year, to allow our guys to do some trench rescue.
cool. I do have one question.
Okay.
On page 10, for your incident forecast, and obviously it continues to grow and you project it to grow. At what point in time does the rubber meet the road where you're out of firefighters given the number of incidents? Obviously you have some projection within that.
That's a great question.
Sorry I asked.
So we have broached the topic in the city about at what point do our services outweigh our staff? Meaning, everybody knows growth is happening. Growth is happening in the town, not so much in the town of Sturgeon Bay, town of Sevastopol, growth is happening in the city tremendously. So that's more calls for service for our firefighters. Where does that go? Of course, everybody's budget is tight. How do we mitigate the extra calls for service and the extra demands on our fire department with the same amount of staff? Other than adding Brenda, our admin assistant, last year as a halftime, we added our part-time fire inspector in 2020-ish. He works 24 hours a week to help alleviate some of the inspections that we have to do. So every building that goes up, that's 2 more inspections a year that we have to do. So you can imagine how quickly that can add up. But beyond those 2 part-time positions, I don't know that we've added any positions in 10 plus years, probably 15
That's
years
what I
maybe.
was gonna ask.
Yeah. So that's a conversation that I think needs to be had through the city, but it hasn't gone too far yet, so.
And you've added responsibilities because now you're probably more of a backup to Bug or Nassawapi than you were in the past? Or maybe not, but I would guess.
Yeah, I would say yes. I would say yes, county as a whole. Everybody is relying on their mutual aid
Right.
because, like us, we're short 3 people. We rely on our part-time staff when our on-duty guys leave the city or are tied up in the city. We call back because we can't leave the city unprotected, or our jurisdiction. I can't say just the city, our jurisdiction unprotected. So anytime that for instance, today we had a car accident on the highway at a pretty busy intersection. So both of our engines were tied up. Luckily, one was able to cut loose pretty quickly. But at that point, if we know our staff our on-duty staff is tied up and can't leave for any reason, we're calling our part-time staff in to backfill, to handle any additional calls that come in. For some reason, it seems that we're getting multiple calls at the same time. You know, the 3-4 calls that we're having a day aren't spread out over the 24 hours. They seem to be glommed into the 1 or 2 hours of the same calls. And nationwide, the fire service is hurting, especially the volunteer and paid on call. Nobody's really volunteer anymore, but the paid on call staff is dwindling, and the question is, where do we find people, and where do we find dedicated people? Where do we find people that are available? So there are more jurisdictions throughout our county that are calling in mutual aid. We rely on mutual aid for the town, for insurance ratings. I'm sure many of you know that we have auto aid agreements with Egg Harbor and Jacksonport because of our unique county, that we just can't, we can't meet the requirements to give a good rating.
Right.
So it's difficult throughout the county.
So the new fire chief is gonna have to get some bodies. That could be you, that could be.
We gotta find some bodies, so if anybody knows anybody.
Okay.
And it's getting very difficult, so it's a never ending. I will be with the department 25 years this summer, and I believe we've been talking about recruitment and retention all of those 25 years of me being here. So it's an ongoing issue, and nobody can seem to solve the problem, so.
It doesn't bode well for the communities that are primarily all volunteer, and
Yeah.
there's not the staff there either, so.
Right.
At some point in time, it's gotta go to a county-wide fire, just like we have with paramedics, but that's my opinion. So.
Yeah, I think there's probably some discussions that need to be had to you know, combine some resources or solve some issues that are lingering throughout our county.
Anyone else have any questions, Linda?
I'm really surprised at the number of medical assists. Are you required to send somebody from the fire department every time there is a medical assist? That's one question. And then I'm shocked at the number, 12 in Sevastopol and 54 in the town of Sturgeon Bay. And then looking at your forecast, because it's no secret that we are an aging population, I'm sure that number came into play anticipating more and more medical assists.
Correct. So, couple answers to a couple of your questions. Each town or municipality has an EMR, or a first responder group. So first responders are now called EMRs. Town of Sevastopol has their own EMR group. So that's why yours are so low on our report. In town of Sturgeon Bay, in their contract, we are their EMR group. So any medical call in the town of Sturgeon Bay, we respond to that. So Sevastopol had a lot more calls than that. I don't know how many you had. We only responded to 12 of them. In the city, we are the EMR group in the city. So anytime you call 911 in the city for an ambulance, you're getting our on-duty crew, one truck.
Our EMR calls were up substantially this last year versus the year before. I think the year before, I'm gonna say 25% of the calls were made by our EMR group, and they increased that, did some training, and I think last year basically almost doubled the number, which would have helped us. Same issues that you talked about, you know, they're not on the tractor, they can't jump off and answer a call and whatever,
Right.
so.
Right.
Anyway, I was glad it was only 12. So.
And next year's report, how we're reporting our EMR calls in the town of Sevastopol is gonna look different. So they're gonna actually be a governmental assist. I went to a training for NFIRS out at the National Fire Academy last year, and how we were reporting it, because we're not your EMR group, we shouldn't be reporting it as a medical assist. We should be reporting a little bit different way. So it'll show as a governmental assist, or intergovernmental assist.
Still
in
be
there,
the
so it'll look a
same
little
effect,
different.
just a
It's,
different
we're
type.
still gonna be going, it's just gonna look a little different on your
Right.
incident type. So you might say, oh, you didn't respond to any medical calls next year. Well, we did, it's just categorized a little bit differently in our reporting software.
Okay. Anyone? Hugh, you got a question?
Yes, actually I have three. The first is, and just for the record, up until today, I was on the Judicial and Public Safety Committee for the county, which has EMS and the sheriffs, et cetera, and we're looking at response times as the county looks at investigating, putting a facility between, EMS facility between Sturgeon Bay and Sister Bay. So I'm curious on a couple of things, because the county, up until, we started pushing it, they haven't really looked at response times, they just looked at call volume. And so we're pushing them to look at response times to give us a better metric, because that's what our customers expect. How fast can you get there? So I'm curious is how do you define emergent versus non-emergent calls? And like, for example, is a fall non-emergent, or is a fall considered emergent?
So response times to me are a very tricky thing to say, hey, we responded 8 minutes for emergent. Because again, Sevastopol, when we respond in the town of Sevastopol, we may be responding to, over by St. Joe's Mausoleum, right by Walmart is the town of Sevastopol. We're gonna get there in about 2 minutes. Now, if we have to go up to Cape Point, that's gonna be, so average response time to me is a very tricky thing to talk about. So when you say, if we have 2 calls throughout the month, those 2 calls may be all to Cape Point. So it might look like we had a 17-minute response time, but we only had maybe 2 calls because it was a long haul, winter time. So I always caution like on response times. Now, when we talk about emergent versus non-emergent, our emergent and non-emergent response is determined by the officer that's responding. So if we get a call for, not always, typically if we get a call for a fall, lift assist, no injury, that's typically gonna be a non-emergent call because it's maybe somebody just needs a little help up. Now, if we get a call that is chest pain, that's gonna be an emergent response. But we have left it up to our, this is just us, Sturgeon Bay Fire. We have left it up to our officer our officer on duty. I shouldn't say our officer on duty. Our officer that is responding to the incident on whether they respond emergent or non-emergent. They may respond non-emergent and we get information and they upgrade to an emergent response. So it really is all situational with the call.
And it's
A little bit of echo.
No.
Echo.
And yes. So in our reporting software, they have to document whether
too
it's an
loud.
emergent or non-emergent call.
Okay, great, thanks.
Mhm.
And then my last one is
I know.
actually relative to Cape
It's all right,
Point,
I asked them to.
which contrary to rumor, Cape Point actually is in the town of Sevastopol.
Yes.
And
Finally got
and
that
the
point.
question is, obviously Jacksonport is closer. Yes, no, or is it because they're a volunteer fire department in the 17 minutes it takes to get your closest unit there, is that faster versus say a volunteer fire department? And does a call center for the county automatically dispatch you because Sevastopol is part of your, if you will, jurisdiction?
So anything in the town of Sevastopol, we are going to be the responding agency. So any call within the town of Sevastopol, fire-related call, not EMR, we are the responding agency, so we will get alerted.
Okay.
Are we gonna respond faster than Jacksonport? Again, situational. They don't have they may not have somebody that can respond. So we may not get a response from them. But any, especially during summer, fall water rescue, we rely on their boat. They have that, I call it the Crazy Legs boat, but the Sea Legs boat where they can drive
Yep.
the boat right in there. So we'll automatically request Jacksonport. So we do a request through the comm center to page Jacksonport for their boat. So that's something that our guys are already doing. So they're responding as well. These times only reflect Sturgeon Bay's response. So Jacksonport would be doing another report saying that they gave us mutual aid. So what happens is when it gets uploaded into the federal and first system, those 2 reports marry together somehow. They get put together because we say we received mutual aid from them and they say they gave it to us. So the reports kind of marry. But as far as call times is just the call time response from Sturgeon Bay. But yeah, we rely on them, at Cape Point quite frequently, so.
Anything else?
I have a question.
Oh.
So a couple years ago, and I know that you're having staffing issues, but I believe a few years ago with the annual report, you guys briefly mentioned that you were looking at possibly doing a third station somewhere kind of more north of the town, just to kind of, because of the expanding with, like, because you guys needed extra coverage. Is that still in the possibility, or what's going on? Because I thought they mentioned that.
That was a conversation, I think, that was had, during a negotiation with the contract and getting better ISO ratings, but.
Yeah, we looked at one point in time in building a building where I don't want to say an extra, but a fire truck could be placed in our community, but it would not be staffed. And the idea behind it is that there might be staff firefighters that live in our area that could respond quicker to pick up the hardware. And we pursued it with the school district, and I talked to Chief Detman about it and everything, and in the end, it didn't pan out. The requirements for the equipment, the requirements for a cistern, to hold the water, et cetera, it just didn't work. So we dropped the whole thing and reverted back to what we have today, so.
Well, I was just wondering, because, I mean, if the county was also looking for that extra EMR station in the middle, and they were looking for around Jacksonport, Egg Harbor, northern Sevastopol area, I mean, is that maybe something we can kind of look into? To possibly pursue?
I have to give that back to the county, I guess, and let them figure out where they're gonna go. I don't know that a joint, I don't know, I'm not sure, but I don't know that a joint fire station and another paramedic station in our community is feasible, possible, staffable. I think the conversation that was had yesterday or the day before was that even the paramedic station may not be manned fully, might only be manned partially during the summer months, during peak activity. So it might not, even if it happened, it might not buy us anything. But I'd have to toss it back to that group, let them figure out where they think the response needs to be. So we could borrow $57 million. We could buy our own, we could buy all of your employees and all of your equipment.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I mean, like, the response time for you guys are great, and also the Sevastopol EMS, they're like almost instantly anytime there's a call. But we also hear the other reports where, like, more towards the southern part of Sevastopol, it's a slower time because there is no EMS coverage on there sometimes, with Sevastopol, that is. And we have to rely on you guys more on that aspect. So I was just wondering if there was some happy medium that we could look into.
I guess I will wait to hear back from the county and see what's up. Right now, it's not on our plate, but that's not to say it couldn't, so. All right, anyone else? All right, Kaylin, thank you very much, we appreciate it. Best of luck in securing the title permanently.
Yes.
We like working with people that understand the community for 25 years too, so. All right. So, I'm gonna take a few minutes and talk a little bit about some of the highlights in the town, and then from there we'll go into broadband and town park, et cetera. So, with that, I guess I'd like to say, if you made it to the polls for this last election, thank you. The weather was anything but ideal. And I also have to thank those of you who voted for the woman on my right, Ms. Vogel, who has played a vital role in ensuring our ability to complete broadband expansion in our town. It would have been extremely difficult to bring someone new on board and say, oh, by the way, it's your project. I know I would have run for the hills, but I'm very glad to have her back.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Also, last night, I spent a couple minutes thanking Derek Daniil, who is no longer on our board, for his 4 years of service. He was on our Plant Commission and Parks Department. And so we thank him for his years of service. And at the same time, we'd like to welcome Trent Olson, who's on my left, for He is the newest member of our board, and Trent follows in his father's footsteps. His dad, Tom Olson, was on the town board from 1996 to 2006. I hate to say I was on that same board, and Linda was there as well, so two of us knew Tom from that, so welcome, Trent.
Thank you.
Take a couple minutes now just to update you on a couple projects. The newest project right now in our town is the construction of a new restroom at the town park. And trust me, if you've never been in them, you could miss that opportunity. They sorely need upgrades, and we hope to achieve that this fall. We were very fortunate to receive two significant grants, one from the Ray Brook Fund and the other one from the Door County, Destination Door County Community Funds. Between those two organizations, they gave us $120,000, which is a significant contribution towards what is going to be a fairly pricey project. I also want to acknowledge and thank Amy, our town clerk, who was determined to garner some of those funds and did a lot of the grant writing, which is required to substantiate why we could use those investments. So thanks to her as well. High-speed broadband, through the efforts of Jeannie Vogel and her committee, with a significant, and I say significant, contribution from Hugh Zettel, who spent more than a ton of time. We were able to secure a grant for $816,000. If you attended any of our broadband meetings in the past, you know that our contribution to this $7+ million project was over $2 million. This will help greatly in reducing the amount that we have to pay for this capability throughout our town, which means it'll cost you less as well. And when we look at the analysis between what this service offers and what you're paying in many cases with Charter and other alternatives, you might actually come out ahead because the cost is so much less. So it could be a positive all the way around. This is a huge win for the town, getting these grant dollars and securing somebody reliably, AT&T, versus the bug tussle of the past. It eliminates the negative impacts that COVID brought for our school kids looking for internet access during those educational problems that they had during COVID. It brings high-speed access for every person in our town. You may not subscribe to it, but it's going to be at your door. It also allows expansion for those people that might be seasonal residents that would like to become a permanent resident in our town, but they needed access to high-speed internet to run their business from home. So we see that as being another positive in increasing the residency in our town. And lastly, it improves operational enhancements for all of our local businesses. Obviously, their processing and ordering and everything else that they do. So overall, I think it's going to be a great positive impact on our community, and I look forward to the first time that they hook somebody up and we can go toast or something. You're going to hear a little bit more from Jeannie on the AT&T implementation timeline, and Mark will also talk about other park improvements that we have made and are making investments in. I'd also like to take a moment to recognize the retirement of one of the founding members of our emergency medical responders, the EMRs. Although the individual is not here tonight, Tim Flieger has decided to retire after 28 years. Why? I don't know. He could have made 30, he could have got the gold watch, but he has decided to hang up his stethoscope, blood pressure monitor, whatever. He happened to be one of the founding members of our EMRs in our town, and he has our undying gratitude. I'm sure he saved a lot of people's lives over those 28 years. So we have a small token of our appreciation for his service, and Amy will see that he gets that in the next few days. So Tim, if you tune into this, thank you very much and enjoy retirement. Okay, last item on my agenda, then I'll be silent. I'd like to take a moment to discuss how to obtain accurate information regarding town business. I mention this because during the last election cycle, a simple land survey project that the town undertook to assess our property lines turned into a rumor that we were selling our beach access points along Glidden Drive and other areas. Nothing could be further from the truth. We also had some similar concerns come up with regards to property revaluations, rumors versus fact. So there are a few sources that I would encourage you to use to get the accurate information. Obviously, check our website. It's a great resource. It's almost like Fleet Farm. If they don't have it, you don't need it. It's on our website. Information on reval, broadband, permits for building. I mean, you name it, it is out there. If you have a question, feel free to pick up the phone and call or email one of the supervisors or the chair. It makes no difference. That's what we're here to do, is to help in resolution and understanding. Of course, you can watch our monthly meetings either on our public access channel. We're the only ones other than the city that have that. And we also have a YouTube channel, so if you like to just go forward, fast, hold, whatever, YouTube gives you some flexibility over the channel. You're welcome to attend our monthly meetings, annual meetings, budget hearings, whatever. All of our agendas are posted. If you'd like to get a copy of our agenda, all you have to do is call the clerk. She'll put you on a list, and for anything that comes up, you will be notified by email prior to that event. And lastly, I would say, don't rely on social media. It's just not accurate. So anyhow, that's it from my perspective. So thank you for listening, and I'm going to have Jeannie talk a little bit about broadband. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the kind words. I get very emotional when I'm thinking about broadband because it will impact the lives of our communities so much. So I'll try to keep it together. So as Chairman Wolfel stated, we did receive over $816,000 awarded to the AT&T Town of Sevastopol by the PSC, the Public Service Commission. Reading some of the comments made by the commissioners, it was very apparent that the letters of support received as part of the application made a positive impression, an amazingly positive impression, on the commission. Therefore, I would like to thank those that wrote those letters. The Sturgeon Bay Fire Department, Door County Economic Development Corporation, Do Good Door County Sheriff's Department, United Way of Door County, Destination Door County, School District of Sevastopol, Door County Medical Center, Clark Lake Advancement Association, the City of Door Administrator, Cherry Hills Resort, Polich Farms, Chanticleer Cabins, Jeff and Brenda Lang, Tom Dumnick, he's gonna love me, he's my neighbor, Dumnicka, and I'll kill Dave and Lynn from Sunny Point, their name, Zajoyski, and Linda Laraway, sorry for killing that name. So it shows that you all truly make a difference, and I thank you again for writing those letters. So in early March, we had a kickoff meeting with 11-member team from AT&T. The team included people from the planning, engineering, construction, project management, network sales, and support. Laddie, if you'd put that up and a little bit more. Move up one more slide. There we go, right there. So I can share with you that the field work will begin in May and June. AT&T or one of their subcontractors will begin assessing poles for aerial implementation and areas where fiber may be buried. When these teams are in your area, they will leave some signage to identify themselves, as you see up on the screen. Their vehicles will also be easily identifiable. As displayed again, well, their vehicle's not on there, but again, make note of the display on the screen. So, and you can move forward with that. So in months going forward, you will see other signs of progress. Keep going, Laddie.
Next slide, Laddie.
He's working on it.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and you can keep going, so you can give them a little peek of that and then keep going. So in months going forward, you'll see other signs of progress with the goal of connectivity in approximately 24 months. So I will provide updates on the monthly meetings that we have every month, and updates will also be posted on the Sevastopol website. Okay, and then you can move to the website, and won't that be fun to see all that work? Oh yeah, and then to the website. So there's a website, it's att.com/notify me. So I've already put my name on that address bar at that website because I want to be notified when they're passing by my home. So I hope you will too. So in the future, in the upcoming months,
There you go.
there you go. There'll be educational programming. We're gonna be working with AT&T to set that up. I can't tell you exactly what that's going to look like right now, but it will be coming. With the idea that instruction on how to use the internet and enabling you to cut the cable cord and get rid of that dish on your roof. So that's all I have.
Cut the cord.
Cut the cord.
Questions from
Yeah,
anyone?
questions? Yeah, Dick?
There's a lot of existing conduit in the ground right now, not by AT&T. So is there gonna be a conflict with AT&T, or, AT&T gonna be able to put their conduit next to the existing conduit?
Well, AT&T, we're talking about poles. AT&T is an ILEC. That's a fancy name for saying that they have whatever their agreement is with Wisconsin Public Service, We Energies. They have existing wire on the lines, right? They can wrap that with fiber without any permits, okay? So that is not a problem at all.
That's gonna be about half of our community,
About
roughly
50-50,
right.
yeah. They're estimating 50-50, about 50% aerial, 50% buried.
So we have existing AT&T aerial lines, the install will be fairly simple.
It should be, yes, I'm not an installer, but I would think it'd be relatively easy.
The issue that the other vendors have had is trying to get what they call make-ready, to get
Yeah.
an assessment from Wisconsin Electric as to how much it's gonna cost them to replace a pole, to get on a pole, to do certain things to hook up. And so that's undermined a lot of the efforts of some of the other people that are in the business. The good news with AT&T is, although half of it approximately is gonna be above ground, except to your house, it'll be below, is they don't have those issues over the poles. So that makes their job easier and makes the implementation for us easier. In the other areas where it's necessary, they'll go underground, so. Does that get at it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just that
Okay.
there has been, another company that has laid conduit throughout the town.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
Charter
multiple-
Spectrum has a lot of
Multiple
cable.
conduits.
Yeah.
through- Yeah.
Yep, you're right. All right. Anyone else? All right, well, thank you, Jeannie.
You're welcome.
And we'll keep up. Next, we have Mark Hain, who is the chair of the Parks Committee. Mark?
Thank you, Dan. So this year we did mostly baseball field updates. Last fall, we started with skinning the baseball field, went back in time, back to an all-dirt infield, which plays better, safer, makes everybody happier because it's easier to maintain. We get better hops, baseball players are happy. Parents are happy because they're not taking their kids for stitches. We added bullpens on the baseball field, both sides for pitching. We would put fences down the lines, safety. School's always safety first, so we like to make them happy because they're our biggest use of the field. All three fields got, the baseball and the two softball fields got new scoreboards. That was driven by the school and the town, worked together getting some donations. We got some small donations, and we get one anonymous donor came in and donated the baseball scoreboard himself. We got a little weird, in our opinion, name on top. It says gift of a friend. The town didn't get to do the wording. The school did that, and us on the town park board, we kinda did one of these when we saw it, but if you go to a game and see that, it's a gift of a friend. So that's from the anonymous donor. If you go over there, they're new digital, I'm not jumping up on ladders anymore and changing out the bulbs, it's pretty slick. High school is going to pitch count for the baseball players, so there's a pitch count right on there for each team. They're very nice, red, white lettering, you can see it for miles, very, very nice. Oh, there will be an eye-catching park bench, and Dan doesn't even know about this yet, installed at Clark Lake Beach coming up. It was in memory of a lake resident who passed this winter, so that'll be installed before Memorial Day. You gotta check it out, it's got a cool little saying on it, it's gonna be pretty neat. The irrigation control box for the 3 fields, the infields, was not accurate at all last year. I'd go in there and it'd be on a Tuesday and it'd be set for Friday, and it was coming on during ball games. It was all haywire, went all whack. So we're gonna be replacing that this year with a newfangled, fancier, nicer, updated. When they turn the water on, irrigation will be going on hopefully the end of next week or a week after. I think that's about all I have. Oh, we are always looking for memorial trees. The shade, we love the shade, we love the trees. Bring it on. I believe Dick is still doing our, no, I mean, you're doing our ash tree. Have you been doing that, or is that turned over?
No, I don't know, we haven't done it for 2 years.
Lost most of the ash.
Okay, so that was my point. The ash trees that have died off, we'd love to replace them with memorial trees, or if you just want to donate a tree, get a hold of me or Amy, and we'll take all you want to give us.
Employee?
Oh, do you want me to talk about looking for one?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so.
We'll
we
take
kinda-
and we'll share a firefighter with you.
Yeah. So this year, we're gonna keep going forward, we're gonna kind of split the duties over at the park. So we have kind of our field team, and we have our parks and grounds and all the other boat launches and that park crew. So we've hired one gentleman that's doing most of the groundskeeping on the fields as of now, but we'd really like to hire, it'd be nice to have a young baseball-minded or softball-minded, sports-minded person to come in, so we're looking for another employee. It doesn't have to be a young person, but it'd be nice to be able to keep them for consecutive years. What else?
Any age can apply.
Any age can apply. All we can do is tell you no.
I think they have to be at least 14.
Well, 14, yes,
14,
14,
yeah.
yes.
14, if you
Yes.
can stretch yourself up there. Might be a little bit young for a firefighter, but we
We
can
can
work
train
through
them.
it. Any questions from Mark?
What is the time frame on the restrooms?
I mean,
Well,
read
we're-
them.
Are they?
Fall.
have-
We're hoping fall.
Okay.
We're gonna have a
Completion.
meeting tomorrow night and start to break things down.
Okay,
It
so
won't
not for
start-
this season?
Right,
No,
it'll
won't
be
be this
after the fall, Labor Day,
Oh,
and
tournaments?
before snow,
Yeah,
so we don't have to pay upcharges for things, but that's the rough timeline, so, okay? All right, thank you, Mark. Next item on our agenda is called Vision for Future Needs and/or Projects. So if there's something on your mind that you think that we should be taking a look at over the future, good time now to tell us what that might be. Most of what we do here is driven by what you tell us. So going back to the early days of the comprehensive plan, one of the key things that came up was internet connectivity, and it's taken us a few years, but we think we've achieved or will achieve that goal. But if there's something else in your mind, feel free to share that with us now or later. Anyone?
I had an idea. Should we have a generator? Just looking at the election. Now, all of the machines have battery backup, but I think they're only good for a few hours.
They are only good for a few hours because the day of the public test, I had the machine plugged in the whole time before it. And then while I was doing the public test, I did not have it plugged in, and it was only good for maybe 2 hours.
Yeah.
So I did that day call Kale in Montevideo because we were preparing for the possible lack of power. And we did have a backup plan in case the power did go out. We were very happy that it wasn't the day after. But we did have a backup plan in case it did go out. So it's possibly something that we would want to look at for a budgeted item maybe for 2025.
Right, I don't know what the cost of a generator is, or how big
Depends
of
on the
a
size.
generator we would need for the town hall to at least have lights, heat, and the machines up and running.
Big.
It wouldn't be very big,
Wouldn't have to be too big.
no.
But we have power in the TV room. And
We have it by the ops machine, but that only,
I know, but maybe what we should look at is expanding the connectivity off of that, because it's got more capacity than we are even touching. So, I
But
mean,
that is
we can
only
look at, we can look at either,
Box in
Yeah.
Maddie's office there, right?
and that power supply can run, it's huge. So it's possible that we may need to reconfigure, and we can take a look at that
absolutely.
and see if we can do that, so.
Well, that's even something too, like, you saw the other communities and churches and like Washington Island, for example, the church and the community center, they let people come in, warm up, take a shower. Obviously, we don't have a shower here, but if we do have a generator and it's long and people are out for quite a long time, at least a warm place to come and hang out.
Okay. Anyone else, anything? All right. Any electors' concerns from the floor? Or resolutions in written form from the floor? Hearing none? All right. So a few announcements. We touched on this a little bit last night. Because of the revaluation, well, every year we have an open book, but this year is probably a little more important that you understand that role that plays in your assessment. We expect the assessments to come out from the appraiser in the August timeframe. There will be an open book on September 8th from 11 to 4 p.m. And also there will be an opportunity for you to talk to an appraiser on Tuesday, on Tuesday, September 10th from 10 to 4. When you receive your assessment, there'll be a phone number and you can call and request a time to talk to the individual. They will set it up. Don't bother to call until you get your assessment. But when you do, if you want to talk to someone, they will establish a time for you to do that. And/or you're welcome to come to the open book. Either way, whatever's most effective for you. Should you not be elated with the results of that discussion, the Board of Review is scheduled for Thursday, September 26th from 1 to 3. That's in person here at the Town Hall. All right? Any questions relative to you?
Yeah, relative to the reval, when do they anticipate being done?
I think they're
At
supposed
the
to be
end of
done
this
by
month.
April,
With the field work?
Yeah.
By the end of this month.
end of this month, yeah.
Okay.
So, and they wait until, they don't send out the assessments until they get the final assessment done by the state of Wisconsin to make sure that their assessment and the state's assessment are somewhat in alignment. You know, the state could come back with $1 billion and they could have whatever, you know, so they're gonna hold, and that's the reason that you won't get the assessment docs until sometime in August. Okay?
And one more question regarding reval. One of the benefits, you know, we talk about earlier how the equalized value increased, and we kind of basically didn't have to do anything, right? It's, you know, property values and all that in our properties and assets that we have in Sevastopol have increased. And one of the things that broadband will do is we know nationally that property values increase roughly 3% or more when you have fiber broadband available. So I think that's a question from a revaluation, you know, because that basically is a benefit to all the residents and property parcel owners of Sevastopol. And so it'll be an interesting question how the assessors will review that. Obviously, it's not been deployed yet, but it is something that is recognized. You know, we've heard from real estate agents, et cetera, about, you know, property owners wanting to know, do you have broadband access? Do you have high-speed broadband? Do you have fiber? So we know that has a positive impact on homeowner value. So I think that's, you know, something that is a benefit that we'll see. Supervisor Hain, you know, relative to other increased values because of some of the investments like what the town is doing in broadband. Thank you.
Good, thank you much. All right, we're coming to that portion of the meeting that's usually everyone's favorite. It's called the adjourning of the meeting. And we are going to. You can't do that yet. We're not ready. All right. We have a motion by Laddie and a second by Derek to adjourn. And by the way, the date of our next meeting, you want to write this down, is April 15th, 2025. It's the third Tuesday next April.
Don't miss it.
All right, don't miss it. All right, we have a motion on the floor, and all of you can vote to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Good evening. See you at our next meeting.
Don't you have to wrap your.